question.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Wonderful to be with all of you this morning. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 11, text number 5 and 6, the childhood pastimes of Krishna. And this is Sukadeva Goswami speaking. So I think you don't read the word for word. Is that correct? I think no word for word.
No, we keep it simple.
Okay. Okay, so let me read the Sanskrit and then the translation of these two verses, purports, short purports. Nate tad uktam jagrahor nagate te titasya tat balasyot patanam tarvo kechit sandigda chetasa. Because of intense paternal affection, the cowherd men headed by Nanda could not believe that Krishna could have uprooted the trees in such a wonderful way. Therefore, they could not put their faith in the words of the boys. Some of the men, however, were in doubt. Since Krishna was predicted to equal Narayan, they thought, it might be that he could have done it. Purport. One view was that it was impossible for a small boy like this to have done such a thing as pulling down the trees. But there were doubts, because Krishna had been predicted to equal Narayan. Therefore, the cowherd men were in a dilemma. Here's the next verse, text number 6. Uluk halam vikarsantam damnapadham swam atmajam vilokyananda prahasat sad vadanno vimumochaha. Translation. When Nanda Maharaj saw his own son bound with ropes to the wooden mortar and dragging it, he smiled and released Krishna from his bounds. Purport. Nanda Maharaj was surprised that Yashoda, Krishna's mother, could have bound her beloved child in such a way. Krishna was exchanging love with her. How then could she have been so cruel as to bind him to the wooden mortar? Nanda Maharaj understood this exchange of love, and therefore he smiled and released Krishna. In other words, as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, binds a living entity in fruitive activities, he binds Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj in parental affection. This is his pastime. So Adipurusha Prabhu has already so beautifully offered so many prayers. I'm just going to offer two little prayers. Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. And I'm going to offer one more prayer. That would be 3. May the entire universe be blessed with peace and good hope. May everyone driven by envy and enmity become pacified and reconciled. May all living beings develop abiding concern for the welfare of others. May our own hearts and minds be filled with purity and serenity. And may all these blessings flow naturally from this supreme benediction. May our attention become spontaneously absorbed in the rapture of love unto the transcendent Lord. This is a prayer of Prahlad Maharaj from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So today I wanted to speak about this idea of the being bound by love. We see in the character of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda, the cowherd men, the gopis of Vrindavan, the cows, everyone is they're immersed, right? They're bound up in the bounds of love for their darling Krishna. This is the mood of Vrindavan. So I feel like I have to ask myself, and maybe invite you also to also ask yourselves, what type of bondage do I or do you want in your life? It's kind of a weird question, isn't it? What kind of bondage would you like in your life? We're free to desire. And then according to our desire, some kind of appropriate bondage will follow our desire, our what's called in Sanskrit, our icha, our desire. Excuse me. We can choose to turn away from Krishna and be bound in the repeated cycle of birth and death, bound to the reactions of our self-centered desires. Or we can choose to turn toward Krishna and become bound to him in affection. Just like we see in this beautiful chapter, we see the example of these extraordinary Vrajavasis, and according to how they desire to love him as a loving cow or servant or friend or parent or lover, they can be bound in love to Krishna. So we also have that freedom to choose. It sounds weird, but we have the freedom to choose what kind of ropes of bondage do we want. Let me try to explain that a little bit. But just like if we sit under a tree, we can lean into a relationship with the sunshine, or we can lean out to isolation in the shadow. Or if you can just visualize yourself being on a beach, maybe you're over by the East River, not much beach over there, but you are by a river. You can, or say, it's better to say, if you go to Rockaway Beach. So you go to the beach and you can we can isolate ourselves on the dry sand. Or we can choose to be immersed, diving deep and coming up again and again, diving and coming up again in this ocean of relationship with the ocean, or my metaphor here is the relationship with Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita 7:27, 7th chapter, 27th verse, talks about this icha, or this desire, this separatist desire, this freedom we have to desire, because we've heard, right, that love can only be free, love can never be forced. So this verse, icha tvesha samutena tvanda mohena bharata sarva bhutani samaham sarge yanti parantapa. This dvanda mohena, it means we're deluded into this separatist duality, this dual thinking. We're bewildered and deluded by an illusion of a feeling that I'm separate from Krishna, when in fact we are eternal parts and parcels of Krishna. So only by illusion do we think that we're separate. And that illusion of separation manifests in our attraction and our repulsion, our desire, our hate, our misery, our happiness, honor, dishonor, the fact that I think I'm an American or a man or a woman, or I'm Russian or Ukrainian. And because of this, we're going to have to fight and quarrel, and Indian or American, right? So I'm this or I'm that, I'm this house or this family or this country, and all these things, these extensions of my separateness are me and are mine, right? My family, my body, my country, my house, my possessions, right? And all these things just accumulate on us by the separatist mentality. So when we misidentify with this kind of separatist mentality, we can't understand Krishna, and we can't understand his gifts and how he's trying to pull us closer by revealing himself, giving us knowledge of himself in Bhagavad Gita, in Srimad Bhagavatam, in so many scriptures of the world, where he's calling us back, right? Appearing in every scripture of the world. So this is a type of envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada mentions in one of his purports in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that real nonviolence means to be without envy. I think that's so extraordinary, isn't it? So this separatist mentality causes us to be envious of others, Krishna, or others, other living beings that we see as separate from ourselves. That I have my interest in my own welfare that's separate from Krishna's interest, separate from his interest in me. One man put it very succinctly, one materialistic man. He said, I have no problem with my relationship with God, he said. He said, I mind my own business and God minds his own business. What's the problem, right? He says he has no problem. So this is the separatist mentality. Stay out of my way, Krishna. I've got my plans here and I don't want any interference from you. If that's what we desire, then Krishna can remain silent in our case for a very, very long time. So this Mahamaya is the separating energy that binds us to this kind of illusion that we're separate and independent from God or Krishna. I can stay bound up in this little, I was thinking of it like a little cocoon of my life, closing my eyes and closing my ears to this invitation that Krishna is offering me again and again, right? Or on the other hand, so we've heard this term Yoga Maya. So Yoga Maya, yoga connects us, right? Yoga is the connecting energy. So Yoga Maya is the energy that connects us and binds us. As Americans, we kind of hate this idea of bondage, right? Slavery, bondage. I want to be free. I'm an American. I have to have my freedom, right? So, but Yoga Maya is the energy that connects us and binds us to love. And so we always have this choice. I can remain complacent and lackadaisical in my little cocoon that, yes, I'm bound up in a separatist mentality. And yes, I have no taste for the holy name. And what can I do? I have to be honest. I'm tired of pretending. Sometimes we hear this. I'm tired of pretending. I have to be honest, right? If I want to smoke something, if I want to drink something, I have to be honest. I'm just going to do it because I'm my own free person and nobody can tell me, no Krishna or anybody can tell me what to do. But what is the example of our acharyas? Where is my longing or my begging or my burning of the heart, as the Orthodox Christians say, this beautiful term, burning of the heart, or they sometimes say burning of the spirit. And do I, at the back of my mind, do I think I'd really like to be free from all these heavy principles, these huge responsibilities, so much time it takes every day to do so many rounds of japa? Do I actually envy the so-called freedom of people who have no spiritual path? Am I kind of secretly envying those people that, wow, it's such a burden on me? My guru, the Bhagavad Gita, putting so much burden on my head. I can't deal with it. Just want to be free. So my question to myself and to all of us, all of you, is which is better, freedom or bondage? It's kind of a big question, wouldn't you think? Or could we say that it depends on who is the master? Maybe that's an answer. In one sense, we could choose to be bound in love, or we can choose to be bound up in slavery. To who? To our vicious minds and senses, which then bind us to this repeated cycle of birth and death, right? There's a beautiful verse that sounds beautiful poetry. Prabhupada quotes this: Kamadina katida kalnita durnidesha. This is a verse from Rupa Goswami where he says, oh my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. I'm a slave to them. And I've rendered them so much service in my life, but they haven't shown me any mercy. These slave holders, these lusty desires in my heart. They haven't shown me any mercy. And I'm also not ashamed to serve them. And I haven't even desired to give them up. And then he says, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened. And now I am trying to give them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I'm now trying to refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires. And I now come to you, Krishna, to surrender myself at your lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your service. So this is Rupa Goswami speaking of coming away from a false sense of freedom to a sense of bondage of love, actually. And then Yamunacharya says it in a different way very beautifully. He says, he's praying to Krishna, he says, by serving you constantly, one is freed from all material desires and is completely pacified. And then he's expressing this longing. When shall I engage as your permanent, eternal servant and always feel joyful to have such a fitting master? So he's expressing some joy in a type of bondage, actually, a bondage of love, right? And Bhaktivinoda Thakur also, he prays to become the dog of a Vaishnava. In some of his poems, he says, I don't want to be born as a Lord Brahma who's against you, Krishna, or envious of you, Krishna. But I would rather be born as an insect in the home of a devotee where I could get a few crumbs of prasadam, right? But in this one prayer I'm referring to here, he's praying, he says, Oh, hey, Vaishnava Thakur, Tumia Kukura. Kukura means dog. I want to be the dog of a Vaishnava. So here's my question. Is a dog wandering in the street, eating trash and getting bitten by other street dogs more happy than a dog at home being fed by the hand of a loving master? You know, the dogs in America have it pretty good, right? So that's a big question. And in one of the great, I would say Mahavakya means great words. So in one of the great Mahavakya purports of Srila Prabhupada in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he defines freedom and bondage so profoundly. Here's what he says. He says, the need of the spirit's soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, 8th verse purport, if you want to look for it. So yeah, Krishna, the ultimate free, complete spirit, the personality of Godhead, right? To see him, to love him would be a real freedom, right? But he also chooses, he himself chooses the bondage of love over freedom. He chooses to become a prisoner of love in the hearts of his dearest devotees, right? Especially those dearest devotees, as we're reading in this 10th, beautiful, wonderful 10th canto. This is the ultimate canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Krishna himself, he's the supreme, complete free spirit, and he himself chooses to be bound by the love of these dearest devotees in Vrindavan. The poet Virgil says that love conquers all. And he says, therefore, that we too should be conquered by love. And Krishna sets the example for us. He's conquered by this most selfless love of the residents of Vrindavan. Right? Nanda Maharaj is being described in this chapter, in this verse. So Krishna carries the shoes of Nanda Maharaj on his head. He dances to the tune of the elderly gopis. They sing, and he dances like a little child. And he allows himself to be bound up by the ropes of love of Mother Yasoda. And he has fun allowing himself to allowing his cowherd boyfriends to climb up on his back. And they say to him, what kind of a big man do you think you are? I'm greater than you. I'm stronger than you. He likes that, right? And then it's also described that he'd rather be chastised by his lovers like Radharani than listen to the hymns of the Vedas. Isn't that extraordinary? And whereas outside of Raj, this is really an interesting point too. Outside of Raj, the yogis are seeing him in their hearts, right? But he doesn't talk to them. He doesn't speak to them. He's too busy talking to the cows of Raj, rubbing their necks and checking in with them. Are you missing your mother? He says to them. Should I bring you to see her? Or are the flies bothering you today? So he's too busy talking to the cows to talk to the yogis outside of Vrindavan. And in another great purport of Srila Prabhupada in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada defines freedom as the pure state beyond all designations. Isn't that beautiful? The pure state beyond all designations. But I wanted to say that there's one designation that's even higher than that. It's the highest freedom. And that is when the devotee can say to Krishna, my dear Lord Krishna, I am yours and you are mine. So that's the ultimate freedom, which is the bondage of love. And Rupa Goswami also explains that for one who thinks that I am Krishna's, I am yours, that kind of love he describes as thick, like ghee. You ever cook with ghee, and when it's cold, you haven't heated it, right? It's thick, right? But even more thick than ghee is, or that type of ghee-like love of thinking, you following me? That thinking Krishna, I am yours, that love is like thick ghee. But even more thick is a type of love where the devotees are so elevated that they're thinking, Krishna, I'm yours and you are mine. So this is even more thick. And this type of love is described like honey. So this is a type of, it's called mamata in Sanskrit, a type of mineness. And that's the love of Radharani and her gopis. And that's like a honey-like love. So this is a beautiful conception that we can come to. That thinking that nothing is in this world is mine, but Krishna, you are mine eternally and I am yours. You are mine and I am yours. And this is a bondage of love that's beyond all false senses of freedom in this world. So I wanted to share with you a poem of like longing and re-identifying, I would say, by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is from his Gitavali poetry collection. And he says, "O merciful Lord, this is my specific submission at your lotus feet. I do not ask for bodily happiness, knowledge, wealth, or followers. Let whatever this is," and this is the part that I think is particularly important. He says, "Let whatever attraction I presently have for material sense enjoyment be transformed into attraction and affection for your lotus feet." Isn't that beautiful? And then he says, "I pray not only that this affection for your lotus feet will remain unwavering in all circumstances of happiness and distress, but that day by day it will continue to grow by the influence of chanting your holy names." And then he says, wherever I take birth, be it in the animal species, in the heavenly planets, or in hell, may ahaitaki bhakti, or it's called, let me switch this so I can see everybody. Yes, now I can see everybody. This ahaitaki means causeless bhakti, without any motives, without any interruption. So he says, may ahaitaki bhakti ever grace the heart of your servant. So I think this is really a beautiful, beautiful poem. And then I wanted to share something else from Srila Prabhupada. I see that there's a little bit of time. So Srila Prabhupada has a beautiful, beautiful group of poems that he wrote before he came to the US, that he wrote in Vrindavan. He was by himself. He was penniless. He had no friends, really. He had the sadhus of Vrindavan, but here's what he expresses. He says, "Seeing that I am penniless, everyone has now abandoned me, my own family, my other relatives, and even my so-called friends. This situation is indeed miserable, but it simply amuses me. I sit alone and laugh. In this mundane material world, who are my loved ones?" So he's talking about, excuse me for a second while I turn off this phone so it doesn't beep. He says, where have my affectionate father and mother gone now? Where have all my elders and other relatives who were my own folk? Who will give me news of them now? I ask you, tell me who? All that is left of this so-called family is a list of names. So we're so bound, right, to our family, to all these temporary things. But then he says, the froth upon seawater arises one moment and disappears the next. The play of Maya's worldly illusion is exactly like that. No one is actually a mother or father, a family member or relative. Everyone is just like the froth on the seawater, existing for only a moment. Just as the froth on the seawater dissolves again into the sea, the body made of 5 elements merges again with these elements after it dies. How many fleeting forms does the embodied soul take in this manner? His so-called family members are only related to this temporary external body. Do you find that depressing? Do you find that morbid and depressing? But then he gives us some hope here in the next stanzas. He says, oh, brothers, and I would add, oh, sisters, all of us are actually relatives, but only on the platform of pure spirit soul. These eternal relationships are not tinged with the temporary delusions of Maya. The Supreme Lord is himself the ultimate soul of everyone. In their eternal relation to him, all souls in the universe are equal. Oh, brothers, oh, sisters, all the millions of spirit souls are your personal relatives. Think of how much you love your mom, Andrea, right? Don't you love your mom? Well, what if we loved every living being the way you love your mom, right? So he says, oh, brothers, oh, sisters, all the millions of spirit souls are your personal relatives. In their true relationship with Krishna, they all coexist in complete harmony. And then he quotes a verse to end, forgetting Krishna, the living entity desires personal enjoyment separate from him, right? Thus the spirit soul enters the temporary material world and falls into the powerful clutches of Maya. So just to summarize, this is my question to myself and to all of you. Which is better, freedom or bondage? And what is real freedom? The so-called freedom of a street dog wandering around hungry, or the freedom to see the free light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the freedom to see all living beings as my beloved, dearmost own. In Sanskrit, they say swajana, or my own relatives, right? We talked about envy of the Supreme Lord, that the idea that I belong to nobody but myself. Nobody can tell me what to do. I'm fine with my relationship with God as it is. He doesn't bother me, I don't bother him. Or as opposed to the love, the bondage and love of the residents of Vrindavan, and the bondage that the free personality of Godhead himself chooses for himself. So these are a few thoughts on the bondage of love, on freedom, bondage, and what was important. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, all of you. What was important for you here? What's a takeaway? What are you going to share with someone today? Or if you have any questions. Andrea has her hand up.
Hare Krishna, Rukmini Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisance. The glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for coming to our little Zoom community. It's so nice to see you again here. This was really powerful for me. I wrote in the chat that when I was younger and before I came to Krishna consciousness, I felt like I had that kind of freedom, right? Like I just did whatever I wanted and didn't worry about, God or any kind of rules. And
we're Americans, right? We gotta have freedom.
Exactly.
So
it's like you're in your 20s and your 30s, and you're just like, yeah, I could do whatever I want. But it wasn't as free as I thought. And then when I think back of it now, I realized that I found myself the victim. I found myself kind of ending up a victim to those that were materially stronger or that were more like were greedier than me or had more kind of, so you end up finding yourself that you end up, like you said, you end up in bondage to others, and they're not people who are looking out for you. They're not people who love you. And I really loved in the chat, Bhima Prabhu, he wrote, you can either be in bonds or embraced. And I really, that was powerful, like you can either be in bonds to the material world or you could be embraced by Radha and Krishna. And who better to be embraced by than Radha and Krishna, who are always our best friends and are always thinking of what's best for us, as opposed to a lot of the people that you may meet in the material world who are not that way and who are maybe looking to turn you into a victim as opposed. So this was really powerful for me. So thank you so much for sharing. It's a great reminder. Haribol.
Haribol, thank you. Your points were really powerful for me. Yeah. Do we want to be victims or do we want to be protected in the bondage of love? And Angelica, you have your hand up. Hare Krishna, Angelica.
Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you.
Yes, I feel like the strongest point was just the simplicity of being honest with ourselves and where we are in our mentality, and even this idea of being envious of those who are not on a spiritual path when we are not inspired ourselves. And it may feel like like poison at first and then nectar at the end. But when we are really in this clearing stage of tasting everything as very bitter, I really relate to that point. And I so appreciate your ability to speak about it so honestly. And this very simple question, which is, what kind of bondage are we actually working towards? Because we need to belong somewhere when we need to serve something, and we need to be bound to something because we cannot just float. And so that is also just such a powerful point. What am I actually choosing to be bound to? And can my bondage be actually liberating, or can it be more enslaving?
Beautiful. Can my bondage be liberating? Thank you so much. Beautiful. Jamuna Jaya, dear Jamuna Jaya, good to see you. Good
Very well, so good to see you. So many.
Smile.
It comes from your mercy and your beautiful class. So many beautiful points, but two things that sort of linked in my mind. I love how you always bring from other cultures and other faiths, and you said repeatedly, it's in every faith. It's in all the faith traditions. And then I was thinking, when you said the point about that Krishna chooses to be bound by love by mother, how sad that people miss that component, that they see a fearsome God, a God that like scorns them. And then it's there. It is in all the traditions that this is the Krishna that just wants your love. And as you were saying that, I felt really sad for people that miss that boat, that miss that sweetness of Krishna that wants to be, wants to be tied up by us. So thank you for reminding us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is in other traditions. Like, did you ever hear the name Saint Christopher? He's from Padua. I don't know if the devotees and wisdom of the sages, if they went to Padua, but Saint Christopher's from there, and he's carrying baby Jesus like his little child. So he's in this parental relationship. Or Saint John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila, they were in this conjugal relationship. So yeah, it is there. But people are a bit stuck in fear of God. Bhima, what wisdom do you have to share for us in your cowboy hat? You're a cowboy and Krishna's a cowboy. And you can approach the cows of Vrindavan. Yeah. Wow.
Well, Rukmini, Devi, Prabhu, what a wonderful class. I always think to myself, about the wonderful Queen Rukmini or Queen Kunti Devi, and you are such an example of such a personality. What I wanted to say is we had mentioned about Bhakti Vinod saying, I want to be a dog of a Vaishnav. And I was also reminded by the fact that you mentioned several times about freedom. And when I'm walking with my dog, he has a choice. He can follow his instinct, or he can follow me or lead me and stay on the path, or he can run off. And I call him and he comes back. And if he doesn't come back, then he's on the leash again. And so we find that we have that freedom with Krishna. We have that freedom within the movement. We have that freedom within Krishna consciousness and our very consciousness that at every moment we can choose to remember Krishna, to obey Krishna, to think about Krishna, to be loyal to Krishna, or we can choose to stray from the path and run away. But we will find that because of our love and attachment and loyalty and training, that we run back to be with Krishna, because that way we know that we always have a shelter and we always have someone to take care of us. So I just wanted to mention that we always have our freedom at every moment to make a decision. So thank you very much for a wonderful poetic class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So good to see you and hear from you, Bhima. Thank you very, very much. Yeah, we can misuse our freedom and be on the leash of Mahamaya, right? Or we can be on the leash of love. Yes. Who is that? Interfaith person has the hand up. Interfaith person, Haribol, you're muted.
Devati. And I just wanted to say,
what's her name? What's her name?
Alan.
Alan. Very nice to meet you, Alan.
A great class, and naturally I'll choose bondage to Krishna over freedom, and frankly I don't consider it bondage. But I also wanted to say too, when you talked about separation, like people Russian, Ukrainian, it also extends to faith. We should remember that whether the person calls Krishna Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever, it's still the same Krishna, and we're all fellow devotees.
Absolutely.
So you consider this universal for everyone, all faiths as well as nationalities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I was sharing a story I was in a group last night, and I was sharing a beautiful story about Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for mentioning that, Alan. There's a story that when the Juhu Mumbai temple was under construction, that Surabi Maharaj, who was the architect, the brilliant architect who designed that amazing building, he came into Prabhupada's room and he said, Prabhupada, one of the stonemasons is chanting Allah, Allah, Allah while he's chipping at the stone. And this was and so Prabhupada said, oh, I want to see him. I want to see him. And then Surabi said, oh, bring him here to your room, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, I don't want to interrupt his work. I'll go to see him, which, in the very hierarchical society of India, this is a big deal. The big man doesn't go to see the little person. The little person comes to see the big person. No. But Srila Prabhupada was so moved by his devotion in the path of Islam. Prabhupada was so moved by his devotion that he wanted to go see him. So Prabhupada came out of his room And he kind of snuck up secretly. He didn't want to interrupt him, but he was secretly watching this man while he was engaged in his tick, 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 and chanting the name Allah. And this was a very disturbing sound. It would give Prabhupada headaches, actually, but he was so pleased to always be hearing this sound because it was progress and it was filled with devotion by this man and others. So thank you all so much. Are there any other points? Any other points you'd like to make? Yeah, this is not a sectarian. Actually, another thing I'll mention, this is from the Orthodox tradition. One of the Orthodox, I think he was some kind of, they call it metropolitan. He said that our sectarian divisions do not reach all the way to heaven. So I really like that one. So yeah, we may think that, yeah, we're all separate, we're all fighting, and we're fighting and killing each other. But here's this wisdom that those sectarian divisions don't reach all the way to heaven. And really, Krishna is only accepting the sincerity in all these traditions. He's not accepting the flower or the fruit or the water or the samosas or the whatever it is that someone may be offering, but he's only accepting the sincerity of our devotion. So yeah, let's try to offer Krishna some sincerity with maybe some tears of love, if we could actually come to that point, to come to the point of longing, as I was describing toward the beginning. So thank you all so much for being here. It's wonderful to see you, Hemlata Thakurani, and all of my dear friends. She's in Argentina, all the way in Argentina. And thank you, Krishna Drew, Kartik, Pat, Sharmila, thank you for joining. Suzanne, Chimuna Jaya. And I see Henry from here in Washington, my dear sister of my childhood, Susan, and all of you, my dear Adi Purusha Prabhu. Thank you all. Andrea, thank you all for joining. Betty, Akiko, Rich, Suzanne, thank you all for being here. Thank you so much. What an honor to be with you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Rukmini, Devi Prabhu. Beautiful poetic class, as Bhima Prabhu said. I really appreciate that you brought up Srila Prabhupada's prayers with a list of names, the family members. Where are they now? So I have a question. What's your realization on the family that a devotee may have? We know you have a wonderful family. Gauravani Prabhu, your husband, Anuttama Prabhu. So how does that reinforce our bhakti when our family members are on the same path? How does that play out in the life of a devotee? Is that a list of names, or is that something that is very helpful in our bhakti?
Whether our family members are devotees of Krishna or not, every living being is beloved to Krishna. And we have to, as devotees, what does it mean to be a devotee? It means that we have to try to make our vision like Krishna's vision. So he's saying that, where is it? That fourth one. He's seeing that all living beings are your relatives. So yeah, it doesn't matter whether they're devotees or not devotees. It doesn't matter if maybe they're devotees but disobedient or running away from Krishna or running. Here in Washington, we have a teenage program. It's called TAG. And I asked, why do you call it TAG? Because they said, because sometimes as teenagers, we're running away from Krishna and he tries to tag us. And sometimes we're running toward Krishna and we can tag him. So tag. So yeah, every living being is dear to Krishna. There's this one really heavy statement by Lord Chaitanya. Do I have a couple minutes, or is the bell going to ring and the curtain's going to open?
And Adipusha Prabhu and Angel do not have, but we have. We on Zoom, we have.
Okay, so I'm just going to say one more thing and then I'll respect all of your time. But what was I going to say? In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's this really heavy statement by Lord Chaitanya. This is so heavy, I hesitate to actually say it the way it is, but I will, because I'm warning you first. He says, every living being is my beloved part and parcel. And anyone who causes harm to any one of them, what will he do? He says, I will destroy him. So as we walk out on the street of New York or Maine or wherever we are, Argentina, if we think, I'm a free agent, you know, I can do anything I want to anyone I want. No, if you cause harm to any living being, like when I get in my car, I always say a prayer that please, Krishna, let me not harm any living being, myself or any other living being, any deer in the headlights or any other living being with this machine. So yeah, we should be very conscious as we walk out of our little ashrams and think, yes, let me not cause harm to any living being because every one of them is beloved to Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Rukmini, Devi Prabhu. This is true Samadarshana. Thank you very much for being an example of that.
Thank you, my dear Ananda Bihari Prabhu. You are the example, and thank you for your broad love for all living beings and all creatures, great and small. Haribol, Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Rukmini Devi Prabhu ki jai. Beautiful class. Have a wonderful day, dear devotees. It's Friday, right? It is. Is it Friday? Yeah, it's Friday. Yeah, Henry Prabhu looks so happy. Yeah, Jai. He's warned and he's happy. Yeah. We love his facial expressions. Henry Prabhu, thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
also.
Yeah.